How you feeling?
Like I might be in labor.
When you have a contraction and then the heart rate kind of drops, we worry about a little bit of placental blood flow.
Held her. Okay.
I haven't seen her yet. She's in the NICU.
Hoping she's okay.
I'm just like so numb.
Me too.
Welcome back for part 2 of my daughter Camilla's birth story, our NICU journey. And then I remember they wheeled me around the corner and I saw her and she was sedated. She had lots of machines and I just reached over and held her little hand and just cried, and I was just so happy to see her. And I remember that moment very clearly. And then the rest is very foggy. I don't remember going into my recovery room. I don't remember anything until the middle of the night. And so, because I remember getting up in the middle of the night and asking the nurse, can I go see her? And they said, yeah, you are welcome to see her anytime. The nurse helped me get into my wheelchair and we wheeled down and I just went and saw her and just sat with her. And my parents came over the next day, and this was the scary day for me. So before I tell the story of day 2, I need to go back a couple weeks. As I said at the beginning, I was really sick at the end of my pregnancy. One of the days, I think I must have been having some Braxton Hicks contractions, and I started kind of having a major anxiety panic attack. I didn't understand what was happening with my body, so we ended up going to the emergency room. And so that night we came home, and in the morning when I woke up, I was kind of in that in-between wake up and sleep, and I had one of the most direct spiritual experiences of my life, where I remember hearing specific words come to my head. I couldn't hear a voice. I heard words in my heart, in my head, and it started quiet, and it just kept coming over and over and got louder and louder until eventually I heard it. It kept saying to me, your daughter is exceptionally strong and resilient. And it just seemed like it kept coming louder and louder until in my head I kind of had this moment, oh, I heard you. I got it. And the voice stopped. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but this takes us back to day 2.
It really does. She has a nice color. All of her vital signs are.
I was terrified. I was still in my hospital gown. My dad is an anesthesiologist, so he knows a lot about lungs and breathing. And he came to me and my husband and just wanted to prepare us. Somehow he'd seen x-rays of her lungs. And he came and said, I just have to tell you, her lungs look really bad. Because she had passed this meconium in the womb and that had been there a while, she was breathing it in with the amniotic fluid, and it gets in her lungs and it's really sticky. So he just said her lungs are really bad. And my husband and I both understood that meant she might not make it. And everyone must have known we needed a minute. They all left the room, and my husband and I just held each other and we both cried. I was crying. I was confused. I was just confused because in my head I thought, but she's gonna be okay. I know she's gonna be okay because I was told a couple weeks ago that she's gonna be okay, that she is strong and resilient. This isn't making sense to me. She had to be ventilated, so she had a tube going down to breathe for her. She was at 100%. Otherwise, she wasn't breathing. She was obviously sedated. I remember the neonatologist came in and we said to her, you know, what's gonna happen? And she was explaining and she wasn't getting what we were asking. And so finally I was like, no, is she gonna make it? And she said, yes, she's gonna make it. It's gonna be a while. She's really sick. Huge weight off my chest. I thought, okay, we can do it. Like, we can get through it. If I know she's gonna be okay, we can do this. We can get through this.
little bit.
So there was complications that came up. One of the things was she got what's called pulmonary hypertension. There was something else with her kidneys and the filtration. And then she got what's called a pneumothorax, where her lung popped a hole. And so air was escaping into her chest cavity. And she actually had one on both sides. So to solve that, they have to cut a hole and put a tube into her lung, so that the air, instead of the air escaping into her chest cavity, will escape out into the air and it can heal. I couldn't feed her, so she had a feeding tube. That's how she was getting food. So what I would have to do is to pump milk every 3 hours. And I remember getting up, because I had to get up every 3 hours in the middle of the night and pump so I could have milk for my daughter. And it was not fun. I hated it. Wasn't even there to snuggle my baby through it. It was just this machine, and I was tired and exhausted. I hated it, but I did it. And so I would save the milk and I'd bring it with me the next day, and they would feed her through a feeding tube. So they would put the milk on a sponge and we would sponge her little mouth, and she was delirious. But she would kind of bite down on it.
Can you open for mommy again? You did so good last time. Oh,
There it is. Yeah. Daddy's still here.
yeah, he didn't leave. You're so close. There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, can you?
Oh, yeah. Suck some of that colostrum.
Yeah. There you go. Look at that yumminess. Oh, that's so good.
Then I remember they would just take it and just put it on this sponge and put it in her mouth, and I thought, that was so much work and you're treating it like it's nothing. I had not held her yet. The big step was getting the chest tube out and getting the ventilator out. Those were two big things. And that was a big day because I could finally hold her. I hadn't held her. She was 6 days old, but they put her on what's called a CPAP, where you have the little mask. So it actually looked a lot more intense, but it was less intense. So she had a little mask on, and still antibiotics and cords and monitors and things and just all sorts of wires, but we got to hold her and it was amazing. And she just sat there on me for 2 hours. And I remember the next day I wanted to hold her again. It was a difficult thing for me to hold her because she had all these machines attached to her that you took a couple of people to kind of move her and move the machines and get me in the right place, and it's crowded. And so it was a process to hold her. So the next day I said, I want to hold her again. And they said, okay, I think a good time would be around whatever this time. And it kept getting pushed back and pushed back. And I kept asking and I kept asking. And she started crying and I was trying to comfort her. And I finally just said, I'm holding her now. Like, stop what you're doing. I'm holding her right now. She needs me. I was, of course, crying while I was saying it. So they said, okay. And they did. And I got her to hold her. And again, she just immediately stopped crying and I'm crying. And it's just, she needed me. She needed me to be there. She had literally been held by me for her entire existence. And now I'm gone. So then it was getting easier to hold her. She was able to get off of the CPAP and on just to a nasal cannula. And that was great because you can technically go home if you just have that.
Take pictures because we're so
So that's the last diaper, yeah. Newborn size.
And And yeah, they got done with the antibiotics and they got the meconium out and her heart was doing better. So things were coming off. We just need her to show that she can feed on her own without a feeding tube for 48 hours. And luckily she caught on fairly quickly.
Getting good daddy practice.
Yeah, she was able to eat and I was so happy because I hated leaving that hospital. So I would wake up in the morning early and I would drive there first thing and I'd stay all day. And my husband would come home right after work and he'd come and we'd stay there till 9 or 9:30 at night. And then we'd go home and sleep and do it again. And I hated being home away from her. Cry every night. I remember being at dinner. We went to get something to eat close by the hospital with my sister and brother-in-law and my husband. And we were just talking and all of a sudden it just hit me like, how dare I laugh and talk while my child is in the hospital? Like, how dare I? And I just was overcome with this insane guilt, started crying at the table just out of nowhere and just couldn't handle it. Taking her home was a whole other scary feat. She was still on oxygen, so we had to come home with an oxygen supply, and that terrified me. So I was pretty weepy a lot, and so when the woman came to explain the oxygen machine to me, I was not ready to handle this. It's actually really easy. It is incredibly simple to work an oxygen machine, but in my head at this time, all I could think was, I'm gonna kill my baby because I don't know how to work this dang machine and I'm so scared and I'm just crying as she's explaining it to me. This is clearly not the first time she's dealt with a crying woman because she just powered through.
Do you like her little bow?
Her family.
Say hello. Look at that little bow. It's so cute. It's so cute.
And so the night before we left, they let us stay at the hospital. They have like a hotel room, which was not a nice hotel room. That was like the worst night of our life. It was so hard. We were the stupidest, most unprepared parents in the universe, much less prepared for a child who needs some extra help. That whole night, she just cried and cried and cried, and I tried to swaddle her. I didn't know how to swaddle her. I'd try and feed her. She wouldn't eat. She just cried, and the nurse would come in and try and swaddle her, and it just was a mess, an utter mess. And the nurse would say, well, I can take her to the nursery for you and you can sleep. And I just thought, well, that's no good. I have to take her home tomorrow. Like, I'm just gonna be doing this tomorrow. I need to figure it out. We eventually did kind of get her swaddled and settled after at about 3 a.m. We brought her home and she was on oxygen. Yeah, she had the oxygen for about 5 more weeks.
Yeah, you're making me wanna try forever. And I feel so free, oh my sweet baby.
Are you having fun? This is our first time with the swing.
I was never the one to give up the ghost. No, I was so stuck. I kept on playing my part, wanted to give up cause nothing was changing. But with you it's so clear, and now that you're here.
So she was about 7 weeks old when we finally got the call that she could take it off. She had to do a little overnight test with it. They would give me a little monitor and I would sleep her without the oxygen, and then we'd turn in the monitor and it would tell them how she did. She did it one night, she didn't pass. And that was scary. And then we waited a couple weeks, we did it again, and we were driving home from the movies one day. My parents were watching her and let us go see a movie. And we were driving home and the doctor's office called, and I just thought, oh no, she hasn't passed. And they said, congratulations, she did it. You can take the oxygen off. Hallelujah. I was so happy because I felt like she was 7 weeks old and I could finally see her face. There wasn't these things all over it, and she just was the cutest little face. And so I was so happy to get that off, and she's been great ever since. And it was a traumatic and inspirational experience that we had with her that we will never forget. She's been a healthy little girl, and the thing that I've learned after going through that is, wow, babies they are resilient. They get through a lot, and these babies are fighters. And if you have a baby in the NICU or you know someone who does, just know that they can overcome a lot of things. The only other thing I can say is that, you know, I feel so blessed that she was able to recover. I'm very aware that not all babies recover. I don't know why we were so lucky that she made it. I don't know why we were blessed for her to get through it and other babies aren't. I wish I knew why. I don't. All I know is I can be grateful and I can just squeeze her little face and her little cheeks every day and tell her I love her and just be so grateful that she was able to make it. We're here 5 years later. She's beautiful, she's silly, she's goofy, and every once in a while I remember that, wow, she was almost not here. I'm so glad she is, because we sure love her.
I was so mistaken, 'cause you glue all the pieces back together. Yeah, you take all my wrongs and make them better.